Hello and welcome. Once a week on this channel, we do a little recap of everything that's new in the world of tech, AI, animation, or anything I sort of found interesting over the past 7 days. Now, these past 2 weeks, we started last week. This is week 2. There's been a crazy amount going on. Last week we had Computex, which was held in Taiwan. A bunch of chip makers came together. There's been a whole lot of new tech, gaming, film-related stuff that's been coming out. A whole bunch of companies have had their earnings reports, and it seems like there's a lot of conferences and trade shows going on right now where everyone's sort of releasing new products. So last week there was a whole lot of new AI chips that were being released. This week we've got a few updates from the gaming world. We've got a few updates from big companies like Apple and Google, and just a whole lot of interesting things to talk about. So to start with, we had a WWDC conference, which is Apple's big developer conference, which they have yearly. And their big theme this year was, you'd think AI? No, it was Apple Intelligence, because apparently they were scared of saying the word AI this year. So Apple had their annual developers conference, WWDC 24, and was focusing mainly on this idea of AI. They were trying to implement into as many things as possible. Now, if this was a few months earlier, AI being pumped into every single product would have potentially boosted the stock price. But unfortunately, Apple somehow blundered such an easy layout. And you'll see as we go through, the kind of things they implemented just weren't hitting the mark. It didn't seem as revolutionary, especially since ChatGPT has been so easily accessible for so many people recently. So some of the things they implemented the AI across were their native apps like Mail, Safari, Siri, which essentially allow people to summarize, rewrite, and better help understanding what you're doing in a search. But yeah, both the market and consumers haven't really reacted positively to this, and their valuations actually dipped by 1 or 2% in the past day. Which was kind of interesting to see from Business Insider that said the current wave of AI hype is boosting companies that emphasize their use of AI, with some like Nvidia seeing their stock price rise over 500% since the start of 2023. And then a quote by The Wired, they were talking about how it seems like it was kind of rushed. And the quote was, "I get the sense that they rushed through it. It feels like an admission that Apple's intelligence is quite not intelligent enough." And that's quite interesting because it seems like they've teamed up with Microsoft and OpenAI to implement ChatGPT into some of these AI features that they're doing, like the summarization. But yeah, it's instead of artificial intelligence, they're giving us Apple intelligence, which if you've seen anything Apple's made over the past, 5 years or so, I don't know if Apple intelligence is exactly the way you want to be going. It seems like they've kind of been dipping. But to give Apple some props, it has shown, it's well known how locked in the Apple user base actually is. And a lot of the time, even though they do delay this sort of implementation into their products, this does end up being the first time that the users will experience these advancements. So at least it is nice that, everyone is sort of being able to experience these features finally across the board. However, it won't be beneficial to all companies, especially with this summarization feature for text messages. They've introduced, just like ChatGPT has and Google has as well, that you can change your tone of voice with the messaging you're writing, and that's sort of being issues for companies like Grammarly, whose entire business model is focused on making people write in a more intelligent way and write more coherently. But with AI being implemented natively now into iOS and Google and Samsung, this may sort of be the beginning of the end for companies like that. Apple and OpenAI have now partnered by implementing ChatGPT and part of their code base into this Apple Intelligence. In a statement, the OpenAI co-founder and CEO Sam Altman said that this Apple partnership aligns with OpenAI's mission to make advanced AI accessible to everyone, and that together with Apple, we're making it easier for people to benefit from what AI can offer. Craig Federighi, big head up at Apple, also said that Apple intends to add support for other AI models in the future. Another big update that Apple announced at this WWDC is finally, after 14 years of iPad, that they've released a calculator app. This is from Craig Federighi 3-4 years ago when asked about why they don't have an iPad app, and this was his groundbreaking response.
Some things that we have not done because to do it, we would want to do something really distinctly great in that space. And I think it's obviously easy to create a calculator app, but creating one that feels like, wow, this is the greatest iPad calculator app, that it felt like, I think we want to do it when we can do it really, really well. And we honestly have just haven't gotten around to doing it great. So
yeah, that's their update. They haven't got around to doing it great. That was a few years ago. Now Apple's made a great calculator app. Not much of an update, but it's finally happened, which is good to see. Another company that has partnered with Apple, however, has been one of my favorite companies, Blackmagic Design. Huge camera manufacturer, famous for making cameras like the Ursa, the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera, which is my first professional camera that I purchased. And they also make and own the software DaVinci Resolve, which is a free but also paid only one-time payment, unlike Adobe, editing software, which is becoming slowly standard over something like Premiere Pro. Now, they have just teamed up with Apple to create this new camera here, which is made to help create high-quality immersive video for the Apple Vision Pro. Now, for a product that has allegedly sold less than 500,000 units of the Apple Vision Pro, it's definitely a very niche and interesting move. But alongside with this, they've also announced the first ever commercial camera system and production software that supports Apple immersing video. So this means that along with this camera, you'll be able to obviously edit inside of DaVinci Resolve or however they allow you to do it. And you can make extremely high quality cinema level content for the Apple Vision Pro, which is pretty cool. It's really impressive looking. It has dual sensors, both delivering 8K images with 16 stops of dynamic range shooting at 90 frames a second. The price hasn't been announced yet, and I'm guessing that with all these amazing features and being such a niche product that won't be super mass market, I'd assume that it wouldn't be as consumer friendly and affordable as the usual products of Blackmagic are, but we'll have to wait and see what happens with that. It does look really, really awesome though, and it's based on the Ursa cinema cameras from the past, which have been some just incredible, low budget, but incredibly high quality cameras that you can purchase. I can't say enough nice things about this company. I've used this camera for years. The image quality it provides, the DaVinci Resolve, all that, everything is just incredible. And it sounds like I'm glazing, but this is an amazing company. And despite being such a niche product, it would be really cool to test out this kind of camera, because it's clearly made for one specific use case. So it's going to be good for that, which is pretty cool. I don't really have any fun little segue here, except for Google has recently come out under some fire for their own issues in the AI space. Now, they have been aiming to challenge ChatGPT with their own version of a AI chatbot, but have gone around it in a hilariously Google manner by not having nearly enough parameters and safe measures in place, leading to responses like this. When people would ask, how many rocks should I eat, or questions of a similar ridiculous nature, they'd answer somewhat seriously with this little AI overview saying, according to UC Berkeley, geologists, you should eat at least one small rock a day. There were also other posts that Google claimed were photoshopped, claiming things like, when you're pregnant, you should have 2 to 3 cigarettes, and other outlandish statements. Now, Google did respond to this by claiming that many of these responses were faked, and they were saying that many of them were faked. However, they did admit that there were a few odd or inaccurate and unhelpful AI overviews that definitely showed up. And so in doing so, they've influenced a change that hopefully interprets and removes any satirical and nonsensical queries. Now, it is a quite funny and corporate response because their first move was just to blame the user. And you can see here, even then, they posted a link like, oh, you can see it on Google Trends, which, sure, nobody was asking how many rocks I should eat to Google because no one would Google that before. But if you give someone an option to do it, they're going to ask something dumb. And also, it's kind of funny, you see a little bump here in 2023 that there was a bump on people asking how many rocks I should eat. Apparently, they're quite a nice thing to munch on, as long as you have them in moderation, over only one small rock a day. At least, because they're a vital source of minerals and vitamins and minerals. Now, this is kind of funny because it's very reminiscent of their recent AI image generation issue that came under fire, because they were showing alternate versions of history, like these racially diverse German soldiers from 1943, or US senators, which was just historically inaccurate. I don't remember there being many, German soldiers that didn't represent this guy. Now we're getting into Adobe, who recently came under fire with consumers saying things like, this is a scam from Adobe side. Great, they clarified, but still dicey, whatever, it's the way. And what did they do? So if you're wondering what they did, they recently had another issue with their AI-generated content, with a change to their terms of services, making it seem like the user's data was no longer fully theirs to own, and that it could be used to train AI and other projects that Adobe was using. Now, this is a huge issue for anyone who's using any of the Adobe software full stop, but especially for people with projects that are under NDAs, as it gives essentially no security or ownership to your files. Now, this is a huge worry to the almost 20 million global users of Adobe's programs, and Adobe did have to come out and give a response clarifying that they didn't train any generative AI on customer content. Although they have also explained that Firefly, one of their AI generated programs, is using a database of licensed content with permission and public domain content. They also clarified that the only data that was getting used was the ones that were stored on the Adobe cloud and that it was scanned. They also made a claim saying that this was only data that they'd be using to improve machine learning features and not AI generation tools like Firefly. And with Firefly, they'd only be using licensed content. And they also did make the point that opting out was available for all users, but it just does seem like further backtracking where they do something and then just do something, throw a punch first and ask for an apology later, which is really unfortunate. And, this is just another step in the worsening image of Adobe towards its users. But it's, again, unfortunately not going to have a huge impact on their company because it's still such a powerhouse of the industry in many ways. As you know, people have been complaining for years and years about their exorbitant subscription fee prices, but Adobe's insanely expensive. They have some amazing software, and it's really cool to be able to use it, especially when you're on a student license. But as soon as you have to use it, full price, it doesn't feel worth it when you're paying, $1,000 a year almost for something you have to do every single year. When you can have programs like DaVinci Resolve, which can be a one-time fee of like $400, or there's a free version, or you can have something like Affinity, which is $100 to use, and you get these licenses for life. So the whole idea and Adobe practice of subscription services is great for their bottom line, but it just kind of hurts consumer sentiment, and this is another step in that direction of hurting consumer sentiment. On the other side of companies that aren't having as much of a negative time, let's talk about Nvidia, who we spoke about a bit last week after their recent announcements at Computex with their new cards and chips that they were releasing. Now, Nvidia has overtaken Apple in market cap, becoming the second most publicly traded company in the US after hitting a $3 trillion market cap. Now, this was driven by its recent announcements, as I mentioned, at Computex. And it was recently found that they are holding an estimated 88% market share, taking even further control from AMD, which fell down 7% down to 12% market share. Now, you might do a bit of math and realize that these two companies make essentially 100% of the entire market. And you'd wonder where companies such as Intel and Qualcomm might be sitting. Those two companies have such a small market share that it's closer to 0% than to have a single percentage of that share, which is kind of crazy. So it kind of shows how this industry is almost not competitive anymore, and Nvidia is almost turning into a monopoly at this point. Their shares are going crazy. It's a wild time if you've invested into Nvidia any time in the past year. Like, your money has gone up. Now, this isn't necessarily, it is a good thing obviously for the company that they're getting all this notoriety, but it's not necessarily a great thing. Their CEO Jensen Huang has gone from being relatively unknown in the general cultural zeitgeist to becoming somewhat of a rock star. That's actually a way that the technology analyst Bob O'Donnell described him as. He's literally being treated as a rock star. Now, he's done amazing things for the company, and as a CEO, he's been incredible. Jensen he's built this powerhouse of Nvidia, and he's obviously enjoying the moment, but he's also signing autographs. He's signing people's chests, as you can see in this photo. Like, it's feeling so crazy that it's almost feeling like a bubble that's waiting to pop. And so the question lies that what would happen if something like Nvidia, this giant behemoth of the company, does begin to falter? Now, I love Nvidia. I've used their products and their hardware and software for years. Since I got a PC, it was an Nvidia PC. I've been, the company, it's extremely highly valued. Some might say that it's a little overhyped and crazy now. And it wouldn't be the first time for a company that's grown this large to grow and then crash and recorrect and continue its overall growth. It's happened to Nvidia in 2022, Amazon in 2021 and 2001, just to name a few times. Recently, they also had a 10-to-1 stock split, which means their shares went from being valued $1,200 a share down to $120. Now, I'm not a huge financial analyst. I'm not a financial analyst at all, but from what I've seen, it seems like these stock splits are just a way to make it easier for people to invest. But nowadays, at least with retail investors like myself, it's quite easy just to invest in fractional shares through whatever market maker you use. There's plenty of market makers that you can buy, a percentage of a share. So even though this is nice, it makes it seem easier to invest, it doesn't actually make that much of a difference overall, or any difference realistically. It just brings the number from $1,200 down to $120 per share, but the shares went from being worth 1 to being worth 10. So, not as big as an event as it might have been, 10 years ago before this was as accessible to us, but it'll be really interesting to see what does happen to Nvidia over the next coming months, especially because I feel like these next few months are going to be a really trying time for the industry in general, for the stock market in general, but especially for a company like Nvidia, who's now going to deliver on these all-time high promises. I'm personally expecting a potential recorrection and dipping sometime soon. But I will also disclose that I have got some money in Nvidia. Not like I've got a small amount, but I do have a bit. Speaking of companies though that have had recent successes as well, let's talk about Xbox. In the past, a way that companies would announce their games would be through events like E3. But this was cancelled last year. So a lot of companies this year just ended up holding their own events. Big names like Xbox coming through and announcing new titles. So a big one that was announced was a new Call of Duty, which we'll play a little bit of the trailer for in the background here. And one of the exciting things with this, aside from it being a 300 gigabyte file size, which is insane, especially if you've got a PS5, a standard one, that's more than half of the storage size of your PlayStation, which is just crazy. But the cool thing with this is that if you do own an Xbox, it's coming out on Game Pass on day one, which is really exciting for gamers all around the world and is definitely going to help boost Microsoft and Xbox quite a bit. 300 gigs, yeah, that's the estimated file size at the moment that's being reported. It's fucking insane. I remember when games used to, you just be able to plug in the disc. It'd spend like, maybe half an hour to copy it onto your PS5 or your PlayStation 2. And it'll be fine. Nowadays, you buy a game and it's going to download another 100, 200, 300 gigabyte storage size on, which is incredible in the worst way possible. Now, I will say, I never played a crazy amount of Call of Duty's games. I did play Black Ops 2 on like a Mac way back in the day. But I'm excited to actually try this one out when it comes out because it could be fun. I'm hoping it could be fun. We did also get some other updates for new games. There's a new Harry Potter Quidditch game coming out in September. There's a new Star Wars game. There's a sequel to No More Room in Hell. There's Civ 7 coming out. Lego Horizon Adventures. A Batman game coming out on the Meta Quest. God of War's coming to PC. The new God of War Ragnarok, and so much more. There's also an Among Us TV show, which is coming out. So CBS Studios and Innersloth is releasing an animated Among Us TV series, which is something that I don't think anybody asked for, but it might be fun. It might just be fun, dumb humor. We'll see what happens with that. It's also starring some pretty big names like Patton Oswalt, like just for starters, Elijah Wood's in there, Randall Park. Great big actors. I'm curious to see how Yvette Brown. I'm curious to see how this is going to be. But yeah, absolutely, we'll go back there. A game shouldn't be more than a couple gigs, in my opinion. Sad to see optimization being forgotten about. 100%. It is kind of crazy that you'll buy a disc and you'll still have to have so much of the game purchased on top. It's insane. I have enough that Dirt Rally is 100 gigs. Even that, it's crazy how big these games are getting, and they're not really worrying about optimization because they just want to make it look as good as possible. Which is it's nice for us, but it's kind of sad. If we take a step to the left, this is a company that traditionally has made movies and is now moving into video games. Blumhouse Productions. They're known for making movies such as Five Nights at Freddy's, Megan, and the Split series. They're the production company behind some incredible horror movies, specifically ones that have been huge box office successes for relatively small budgets comparatively. And they've just made a venture into video games at the Summer Game Fest, showing a game lineup with a number of different horror titles, which look really exciting. It's pretty cool seeing a really big production house that's made some really cool IP venture into the games department as well, especially coming out so strong, which I think I'll show here, with such a broad lineup of games that they're releasing. There's a huge variety of styles in these horror games, a huge number of different types of games. We've got, sort of 8-bit versions. You've got some what seem to be VR games. It's not going to let me load any of these, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of different titles in here, all different art styles, all seemingly different types of horror games with different playing modes. I'm really excited to try some of these out because these could be really awesome, especially try them out on stream. Because one of the big things that it's so important in games is the storyline, and having a company like Blumhouse Productions, which it's got a proven track record of success in film production, could be really exciting for the games industry. Speaking of film production companies, let's talk about a less well-known film production company. That's right, Starbucks is jumping into the side of filmmaking. They've decided to launch a production company called Starbuck Studios, partnering with another production team called Sugar 23, production company that's behind projects like 13 Reasons Why, the Netflix TV show that I won't get into it. It was quite dark and depressing. And Spotlight, a successful movie as well. Now they're looking to create, and I quote, premium entertainment. Because apparently their brand is all about storytelling. And I guess this is their latest venture into storytelling. Starbucks isn't the first non-film related brand to join the film industry, with Mattel obviously recently having such a huge success with their IP of Barbie. One of the biggest conglomerates in the world created their own production company as well recently, that being LVMH, or Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy. They've created a film studio as well, so I wonder what they're going to do. Potentially some sort of biopic. Like you saw, the House of Gucci came out recently. You're seeing all these big, brands that are turning into movies. Now, some might be excited by this. I personally, as someone who's actually interested in filmmaking, think this is pretty horrible. At the end of the day, it's definitely an interesting move, but it's just pushing forwards. And you could talk about your consumerism and capitalism and all that kind of jazz, but it feels the opposite of something positive like Blumhouse, where you've got a small production, well, not small, but sort of indie production studio creating these amazing, unique projects. This is just giant behemoth mega houses trying to make more money somewhere. You've got Starbucks and Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy, like LVMH and Mattel. It's just praising consumerism at the end of the day. And I personally like to support, I love I'm not going to deny it. I do enjoy watching Marvel films. I like the big budget things as well. But I feel like we don't need more, traditionally non-film based companies just making stories about their own products, which just become 2-hour advertisements. I prefer to see, indie original IP projects that sort of support filmmaking, support artistic visions and creativity. Actually, recently, I saw a video by Pinely, a great YouTuber, about brand movies. There was a Pop-Tarts movie made by Jerry Seinfeld. Like, it feels like it's getting too far. And from them moving from making movies about, people making movies about companies to the companies making film production houses, it feels a bit dirty, to be honest. And to end with things that also feel dirty in this line of fast food, let's talk about McDonald's, our favorite peak of consumerism. So let's visit a trend that I thought died a few years ago just post-COVID, but sadly seems to be still trundling along. It's Macca's in the metaverse. So this is for McDonald's Singapore, not worldwide. But last year, in 2023, they released a series of 2,000 NFTs based around Grimace. Just going to let that one sink in. Now, these were free, and you could redeem them for free, and were untradeable, which I guess is good. But the benefit of these NFTs is that they get you extra special features in a metaverse game. So this is a metaverse game made by McDonald's Singapore called My Happy Place, where you can win different prizes. And if you go into here, you can create your own little mini Macca's restaurant. You can unlock exclusive merchandise. And it just feels a bit gross, to be honest. You can unveil your dream restaurant in McDonald's. How exciting. And you get special features if you've got these NFTs. This also isn't the first time that a McDonald's brand has gone into the metaverse, with also in 2023, McNuggets Land being launched in partnership with Sandbox, which is just an excuse to pump NFTs and the word metaverse into something and give it, low poly pixel art. I have tried the Sandbox metaverse out in the past, and it was just trash. It's again, when you compare something like Blumhouse Productions and Starbucks, you've got this amazing IP, and then, unnecessary consumerism. It's like comparing any of those games that you see at E3 to, this shit. It's just embarrassing for the field, unfortunately. It's just sort of surrounding every part of life now. And it's just unfortunate that seemingly the way that we're going isn't towards more creativity with artists and, artistic individualism and, artistic expression. We're going towards big brands who are already huge, trying to pump their way of life and pump their message and pump their, bullshit little propaganda into every facet of our life. With McDonald's Land and with Starbucks Productions, who knows what's going to come next. And luckily, that is where today's Tech Talk Tuesdays ends. So as ridiculous as that all sounds, we'll end it here. And I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for watching along, and I will see you next week with the next installation of Tech Talk Tuesdays.